the education sector. We started off yesterday, and having listened to the comments of the minister and lots of guests we had yesterday on what needs to be done to save the situation. Well, this morning we're joined by Professor Awosika, who is an educationist. Thank you for coming again today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, yesterday, it was quite a lot of fears expressed here on the program, how they all confirmed to the fact that something needs to be done about our situation, and done real quick too. And perhaps no quick fixes, but even if they were to sort this out, would you, for instance, welcome both short-term and long-term strategy or policy to sort this out? Or do we just wait for the long-term approach and make sure it works?
I don't think we have time for a long-term approach. This conversation started, I want to say in the 70s, when the Billy Brandt Commission gave its report on the North-South dialogue. And what the North, which means the developed nations, told the South was, you have to get educated, and you have to get educated fast. It's the only way you're going to get out of poverty. 2012, we're still having the same conversation. So we need to bridge the gap before we do something elaborate. And there are little fixes that we can put in place. First of all, who is teaching our children? My understanding when I came back 3 years ago was, the only people who teach are those who can't find jobs in other places. Well, that's sad, because a teacher should be one who is passionate about teaching, one who is going to take the failure of her children or her students personally. And when they fail, you failed. And so somebody who's going to be in the classroom is going to be one who will try to be as creative as possible, do everything they possibly can to make sure that the students succeed. Right down to the color that you paint your classroom, right down to the decorations that you have in your classroom, because these are some of the things that stimulate the minds of young people, and it helps them learn better. So they're small, but they're very significant. Not only that, what are we teaching them with? And in what capacity are we teaching them? My sister-in-law teaches for Lagos State, and the last 3 years they've made great improvement, but there's still a lot of work to be done. Teaching 90 students in a class and having to teach 8 arms of 90 students each is bad. We have to hire more teachers. It doesn't take rocket science to do that. We have to train more teachers. I've been in a forum before where a guest speaker came to address young people, and the first thing that came out of her mouth was, "You will never end up in a college of education in Jesus' name." And I'm like, excuse me? What are teachers? Third-rate citizens? So if we think that about the people we put in front of our children, then we have issues. Until we start putting teachers in the position that they deserve. I remember when we were growing up, if you were a teacher, you were huge in the community. Now if you were the son or the daughter of a teacher, wow. I mean, you were supposed to be one of the best kids in town. But that's no longer the case. We seem to have relegated education to the background. Not only that, what are we teaching them with? Look, what resources do we put in front of these students? No books, outdated material. We have computer labs with maybe 1 or 2 computers in it. CIS majors or computer information system majors, they graduate having never sat at a laptop or a computer to do real work.
But again, if you look at it, the question we should be asking now that you've just reeled out all of this is, how did we get here in the first place? Because all of what you just said, some of them were highlighted yesterday by Professor Awosika when she said, well, they never do, or those who never had the interest of going into education as a profession were those who we are getting to see come through that process today. So how do we get back to that era where we can now say, for you to be a teacher, you must have that passion, you must be well remunerated, and you talk about provision of teaching aids as well as books. Once upon a time, people got free books, and even if you'd never got free books, we're given a good functional library?
We have to get back to the basics. And we may think, oh, this is going to cost a ton of money and we can't do it. Well, the Yorubas have an adage. If you're trying to save money while not training your child, the Yorubas say it is the child that you did not train that's going to squander your wealth. So if we don't spend the money on the students now, they are going to come back to haunt us. I want to give a quote that's been ascribed to the Lagos State governor, that if they don't go to school during the daytime, they will be armed robbers at night. And so we have to spend the money on these kids to get them the education they need, get them the books they need. We can assess teachers now. There are instruments out there, tools out there that would help you. You know, when you complete a survey, we can tell if you have a passion for what it is you say you want to do.
You know, if it still happens, because then we saw inspectors coming to our schools then to ask even what they stay behind and what the teachers teach, and give them grades and comments to see if truly you were doing it the way it should be done. Do we still have that?
Well, I believe we still do. They still go into these schools. Now, what they're assessing is what I'm not sure about. But inspectors still go into the schools and examine, the teachers and watch them teach. I actually had the opportunity to work with, a few of the higher institutions here in Nigeria, and one of them, we had to actually visit some of our students, while they were, teaching in different remote areas of the country. But my position is even before you start working as a teacher, we can assess whether you are cut out to be a teacher. There are surveys that you can fill in that is going to show what your interests are, and if you're going to do well with children, or if you're going to do well at the secondary or the university level. So and these instruments are very much available and inexpensive, that we can use to make sure that only those who will have the interests of the students at heart, will be put in front of our students.
Yesterday or 2 days ago, when the Senate Committee on Education paid a visit to the Universal Basic Education Office, I think Nigerian attempt to instill that goal of the United Nations education for all by 2015 at least. He painted a very sad picture, the man in charge of the office, saying that it seems that no matter what we try to do, our attempts are just frustrated. You send books to some places, the teachers can't even read the books, talk more of imparting the knowledge to the students. In some other places, the books find their way, books meant for students or pupils find their way into the market, books that are not meant for sale. How does the government begin to put its foot down and actually see that what needs to be done is done without and people at the bottom understanding that this, at the end of the day, is for our own good?
Well, again, I think I'm beginning to sound like a broken record. You start with the teachers. A teacher that can't read the book that is supposed to be, impart knowledge in the students does not deserve to be in the classroom. And so we have to start with how we hire. It's not just about, my sister's out of school and she doesn't have anything to do, and so could you please just find a place, just put her in the classroom somewhere. That shouldn't be the case.
But you see, you already painted a picture, for instance, now in Lagos State, where you say they're trying at least one teacher for a subject, maybe to 8 arms of 90 students or pupils, and you say hire more when they are not available. Are they truly available? How do we begin to hire? Okay, do we still have the choice of selecting when we see that we're grossly understaffed?
Well,
or do we make do with what we have?
No, we cannot make do with what we have. Otherwise, we're going to go down the tubes very fast. We have to train people fast. And there's the problem with access. I invigilated an examination for one of the universities here a couple of years ago, and we only had 2,000 positions to fill. seats to fill in the classroom. And we had 12,000 students show up for the exams. So that means we're not providing enough access, for people to get trained so that we can put them in the classroom. Now, teacher shortages is not just peculiar to Nigeria. The United States, pretty much has been dealing with it for a long time. And what they have done, instead of you going to a college of education directly, if you have a degree in any area that you could teach in any of the primary schools or the secondary schools, they would then allow you to come in, but you would be trained on how to teach or how to administer an elementary school, so that you are learning on the job. And there are people out there. I ran into a young girl this past week. I saw her reading, and I'm like, "Are you a student?" She said, "No, but I want to be." And I said, "What would you like to be?" And she said, "First I thought I was going to do something in the medical area, but now just any kind of education beyond my school cert would do." Which means we're not even at the level where we can stop and say, we make do with what we have. We have to train more people to put them in the classroom. Even with the Lagos State situation, they could have teacher helpers. They're not 100% teacher educated, but they're educated enough to be assistants to these teachers, so that they're not controlling 90 people by themselves. You could give them teaching assistants, to start with. That would be a bridge, between when where we are now and when we get enough teachers to put in the classroom.
Okay, but how do we strike a balance? Because at the end of the day, if they pump a lot of funds into education, trying to restructure it, it will be expensive. And then you have a lot of, lots of people live below the poverty line. How are they going to meet up with that? Because some say that will be the reality on the ground eventually.
Yes, but then again, if we say we don't have the money, it's a question of we're hurting ourselves, because these are our children, and if we don't educate them, then we don't have a future. And I believe strongly that the future of any nation is inextricably linked to the level of education of its people. And it's sad that it used to be when Nigerians go overseas. First of all, the last census, Nigerians were the most educated immigrants in the United States of America. The most educated. And it used to be when Nigerians come to school over there, we don't even worry about them, because we know they're going to slide right into the classrooms and they're going to be making straight A's. Not anymore. Now we're worried about them even having a good control of the English language.
Wow.
The ubiquitous H's showing up everywhere, in all of you, and you're thinking, what are you talking about? People putting H's in front of their vowels all over the place. Can't communicate, can't read, to save their lives. And now we're finding situations where when somebody comes from Ghana, they can run through a program in 1 year, and somebody comes from Nigeria, they put them through a program for 2 years. You cannot go into the 1 year program, because your first year is going to be remedial.
It's really deteriorating to the extent that now even the libraries are out there, let alone the language laboratories you talked about. But again, the student can't do it all by himself or herself. Let's talk about the provision of such facilities, and even the teacher can't all the time get himself or herself trained. Someone needs to do all of that. Now, that brings us to the government angle of it. What can they do, or what haven't they been doing to have made us get into this pit?
First of all, we have to fund education. Less than 1% of our gross national income is spent on education. So that is very
less than 1%.
dismal. Yes, sir. So that is it portends tragedy. So what you don't put money into, you don't get to work. And not only that, we have to provide access. We can't have however many, thousands of students, 72,000, I think the last, time, going through JAMB or WIAC or whatever, and they can't get into any university. They're out there, truancy is rampant. So, and we say there's insecurity.
But would it be a bad strategy or policy if they were to also lay emphasis on technical schools and skills?
Oh,
because
absolutely.
at the end of the day, it's about the skills. What can you do?
It is a fantastic strategy. That is where we need to start. I encountered a young man yesterday. His father was painting, and he sat down. And I said, "What are you doing sitting here? Why aren't you helping your dad?" And he's looking like, and I'm like, it doesn't matter what kind of education you have to have a skill. Painting is a skill. So you need to get in there and start looking at what your dad is doing. You'll go to school, yes, but you have to have skills. And we're going to get to a point where we will not find people to do some of the basic things that people are required to do. The first thing young people think about now is, as soon as I can ride an Okada, I'm going to buy an Okada, and that is what I'm going to do. Nobody's learning plumbing. Nobody's learning electrical electronics. Nobody's learning any kind of trade. And I believe strongly that even with a university education, we all need to have a skill.
So the DIY attitude is what we also need.
Absolutely, sir. Yes.
But tell us about this issue, because we see immigrants. I think it happens the world over. Even in the UK, they complain about it. Their citizens don't want to do those quote-unquote menial jobs. But we see people who go from Africa, get to Europe, and they do all sorts of jobs, but they won't do it back home. Why?
Well, I think it's the orientation. We believe that those jobs are for lower cadres of people, and that is what is instilled in us as we're growing up. You have to have that glorified piece of paper called a university certificate, otherwise you are nobody. I can give myself as a typical example. Yes, when I left the Nigerian shores, I was teaching at a higher education level. I was on radio, I was on TV, and then I found myself in the UK, and I was like, oops, okay. The only thing I can get to do is to clean offices and cook and do dishes. And that was how I paid my way to get my PhD, because I had a goal and I pursued that goal. If we let our children know that there's dignity in labor, and don't just sit at home waiting for the next JAM exam. Start doing something now, even as you're getting ready to do that. Let them know that yes, the paper qualification is important, but at the same time, you also have to have something that you can do with your hands. If all else fails, that is what will lead us into the entrepreneurial position that we need to place this country, where we now have students who come out of the university and they immediately know what they want to do. When I was in school in the United States, we did a term paper for a business plan for an entrepreneurship class, and some of my friends were going to go on to do the PhD, but when they turned in their plans and they saw the outcome of what they could do, they immediately finished their MBA and went back to their countries to carry out the plans that they had put in place. So if we don't show people that your certificate is nothing until you've been able to transfer it into something else that adds value, then we're going to continue to have such problems.
And we have a lot of challenge with that here, because people just want to acquire that paper and then go seek where they can use it, and not just to acquire that skill with a view to, or your ability to actually do what you have acquired based on your skill. And so, but yesterday we also had a professor who was here, and she talked about the family, the role of the family, the parents here, because she says we have a lot of parents who want their kids to pass, but the wrong way. Mm-hmm. But we sit back and think, oh no, it's government that has to do what they have to do. They should come up with the policy. And we tend to always overlook that little thing that parents can do.
No, in fact, what the parents can do is not just little; it's a lot.
Oh.
Because I keep saying this: for every person who's out there who receives bribe, who is an armed robber, who is a woman, a mother, an aunt, a sister, was involved in that person's life. And unless you steer them right, they're going to go bad. And so charity begins at home. And what you instill in your children is what is they're going to carry into the public. I remember my mom, when we were growing up, would say, you have to get an education, because education is the only way that I know of people getting out of poverty. And so you have to study, and every time when you head out to school, she would say, remember the son of whom thou art. And so when you see opportunities to cheat, or you're thinking, mom's at home, she's going to get my hide if this ever gets out that I've done something like this. So parents, especially mothers, have a strong role to play in the education of our children, and not just in morals or upbringing, but even in their academics. When we were growing up, my mom didn't speak French. She didn't understand French, and we would sometimes try to pull one or two over her, and she would just laugh and say, I'm old enough to have enough common sense to know that you're talking about something that you don't want me to know, and so she started picking some words, out of the French language, in order to just help her to communicate with us. So parents have to be that committed to their children's education.
Well, the way it is now, if we look at our institutions, we have loads of them for different purposes, and it looks like some of them are already going into extinction. Technical colleges is just one of such. Are you thinking of that as a means of helping people come back to doing things yourself, getting skills? Now we'll talk about an attitude thing for most students. Should the government also go back and see how they can revamp most of the technical colleges in the country?
Yes, we do. And we need to do it very quickly.
But the end is also important. When they come out, who's going to give them, or who's going to patronize them?
Well, what we have not done is add management and business education to the technical skills that we give our students. Because when you have a skill, it doesn't turn into money until you apply it as a business. And I think some of the, I'm in talks with the National Board of Technical Education by virtue of the fact that I'm trying to set up an institution of such, and they have now a requirement that every program must have an entrepreneurship arm to it. So when you get your technical education, you have to now get the skills to translate it into a business. And some of the things they require are customer service, marketing, management, and that is the only way you can get that piece of paper and the skills to translate into the Nigerian economy.
We say that because that same piece of paper, there's always this disparity between the man who went to a university and the man who has that skill somewhere from maybe a technical college or a polytechnic.
Exactly, and that is why our government has got to change the mindset of the people by the way we remunerate people who went to technical colleges. When I understand, when you go into the civil service, if you have an ND or an HND, you start at level 7. And if you have a university degree, you start at level 8.
It's still happening.
Well, unfortunately, we have it backwards. It's got to change. If we have to put them at par at least. That's the only time I, as a parent, for me, it really doesn't matter. My children must get an education and they must have a skill. But the parent out there who knows when my kid goes to technical school, they're going to be a substandard citizen, will not encourage them to do so. And I understand the lady who said, may you never go to a college of education, because she's thinking, well, your lot is going to be worse off if you do. But if our governments can change that mindset and elevate these people, then, and only then, are we going to begin to make progress?
One of the things that you mentioned that was very critical is funding. I was taking a look at the 2012 budget, and I'm looking at the amount allocated to education here. It says it's 400.15 billion naira. That's aside money allocated to Universal Basic Education Commission, the Petroleum Technology Development Trust Fund, and the Education Trust Fund. So there are all these special intervention funds, aside the money going to the education itself. Now that money compares favorably, say, with monies allocated to works, which is about 180 billion, agriculture and rural development, 78.98 billion. Now it seems that the federal government is trying to also prioritize education, but we're not exactly feeling the effect of this fund. How can we, spend the money in such a way that we're attacking what needs to be attacked first, and we're getting to see results as quickly as we want to see them?
Again, we're not going to focus on just one particular problem for education. We have to be strategic about it. I know facilities are key, but people get educated under the tree, and they still can do well anywhere in the world if the right material is put in their minds. So I would say, yes, let's put money in structures, but limit the amount of money we put in physical structures, and put the money in the soft areas, which are the people.
Which are also very difficult to see. Because, imagine a scenario where a journalist goes to a school, sorry to interrupt you, goes to a school and sees, say, children learning under a tree. You're not going to, most times you might not interview the teacher. Or if you do, you're possibly saying, why are you teaching under the tree? And the teacher will tell you the reasons why he or she is teaching under the tree. It doesn't take into account the quality of knowledge being imparted into those students, whether or not they are under the tree.
Yes, but then if the teacher could also show the journalist that, in our last WAEC or NECO exams, our graduates, performed, X, Y, and Z better than, talking about under the tree is a little, far-fetched. Hopefully we're beyond that. The days of the itinerary teacher is gone. And yes, the facilities have to be there, but we do that to an extent. But you see, the facilities is where money goes out. Is where you can put out large contracts, and money can exchange hands, so more people other than the students and the teachers can benefit from structures. But if you put the money directly on for example, I just praised Lagos State. The structures of the schools that I saw when I came 3 years ago hasn't changed. They've maintained it, but they've made that improvement on their teachers and on the students, providing lessons for them after school, and paying the teachers to do the after school work, and so the teachers can feel it. When they get home, we hear about it, and the students can feel it too, because now when you read their essays, which I have the pleasure, if I may say, or not, of reading sometimes, and I'm like, oh Lord help us, but those essays are getting better, because the teachers are now able to help those students. So I know it's not easy to see, but we feel it in the family, and we feel it at home when things are going better with our teachers, and there's quite a lot of them, and so they pack a heavy punch, when we make their lives better.